إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. You guys, so what is your guys' questions? You guys want to leave it till the end, or you guys want to do it now?
You're talking about the mani and wadi and...
Can I clarify very quickly?
Yeah.
Okay, madi is, well, this is my opinion and everything. Madi.
Yeah.
Okay. Madi is najas.
Mm-hmm.
So you clean your clothes, make wudu, and you're able to pray.
And you clean yourself too if there's any on you, right?
Yeah. So wadi, same idea. So you clean your clothes, clean yourself, make wudu, and you can pray. Najas, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
And mani is Tâhir, and you make ghusl, and you can pray.
Yeah.
And you have the option of whether cleaning it or not.
If you do or not.
So it's not even, there's no point even mentioning that, right?
Well, I mean, the importance of mentioning it is just because there are ahadith about where the Prophet ﷺ would wash it, or Aisha would scrape it off or wash it, so we need to understand.
It's not mandatory.
Like what context were they washing it, or what was the reason why they washed it.
Okay. And you said madi.
Madi and madi.
Dal.
Yeah.
And
wadi. Wadi with a dal.
Okay. And many with a noon.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the difference between madi and wadi?
المذي هو it's clear and it's يعني ايش بيسموه لا
frosted clear
يعني sticky لزج
لزج
and يخرج بالشهوة وما يوجب الغسل. والودي هو ثخين أبيض ويخرج عقب البول الغالب. هو أصلا يعني شكلها نفس المني. نعم.
ولكن ليس بالمني.
والله.
No, it's clear. صح, it's clear.
لا هو شكلها نفس المني. الودي تقصد؟ الودي نفس المني. لا هو نفس الودي شكلها نفس المني. ثخين وأبيض. المذي clear.
Yeah. الودي yeah. طيب اللي يقول كوت المذي it comes الاحتلام when you're sleeping or
لا هو المني اللي يخرج في الاحتلام.
المني اوكي.
المذي هو اللي يخرج حال الشهوة وقبل يعني قبل الجماع قبل خروج المني.
اوكي. No, I got it, but the names got me a little bit confused. Only the names. You know what I mean? بعدين نجاسة المذي because of حديث علي, صح?
Yeah.
That's why we because he told him to wash it off first. So that's why it's najis.
That's why.
والمني it's najis حديث علقمة. إيش الدليل حديث علقمة؟
إيش المني؟ لا المني طاهر. عائشة فركها عن ثوب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't write it.
Any other questions?
الدليل هو حديث عائشة. هذا هو الدليل.
No.
I'll give you. That's not.
Told you what? Who? Who's here? Yeah. You said you had to raise your.
Can you just give me the hadith quickly? Just fast.
Which one?
The hadith Aisha. The one named Farkat. Do you know?
Yeah. It's from Sahih Muslim. From Aisha radiallahu anha that she said, كنت أفركه من ثوب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم.
So the fact that they only scraped it and didn't wash it tells you that it's not najis?
Yeah, because it's something that would have soaked into the clothing, right?
Yeah.
So just scraping would only take off what was on the outside.
But that hadith happened when was he already praying?
Was he already praying?
There's a hadith
that she would do that and then he would go out to the salat.
Oh yeah?
Or that she would do it when it was dry, but if it was wet she would wash it. And there's another one Allahu Alam how authentic it is though, but that she would do it while he was praying.
Yeah.
Like sujood
So
al-ardi.
what if it's on both sides?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it as long as you make ghusl.
الودي. شو دليل النجاسة؟
والله كما قلت لك أنا ما أرى النجاسة.
شو ذن طاهر.
يعني في قول في الأئمة الأربعة يقولون أنه نجس، وفي رواية عن الإمام أحمد أنه طاهر.
طاهر.
الله أعلم هذا الأصح.
الأصح أنه طاهر.
نعم.
يعني حتى حديث ابن عباس that they relate to.
Yeah.
Doesn't even there is no like any sign of being najis.
لا هو
المني والودي والمدي المني والودي والودي أما المني ففيه غسل وأما المدي والودي فيهما إسباغ الطهور
ويغسل ذكره وأنثييه.
that's تكمل الحديث. هذا صحيح صح؟
Yeah.
ويغسل ذكره ويغسل ذكره هو
أنثييه. أو ويغسل ذكره يعني الأنثييه في بعض الروايات.
الحديث مين؟ حديث الترمذي صح؟
هو حديث ابن عباس.
معلوم where is it؟ صحيح؟
ابن أبي شيبة. صحيح. ابن أبي شيبة رواها.
Yeah, okay, that's why.
It's good
Okay,
then?
I'm clear, yeah.
If you have more, ask again after.
No, I get confused because the way I don't know, I got it into Najas. That's why I got confused. I know it's not Najas.
Yeah.
No, it's good. Don't laugh at me. Sam is laughing.
No.
Yeah, you are.
The next topic that the author mentions, he says the urine and stool of animals that are permissible to eat. So, but this should actually, it should say, like if you look in the Arabic of the book, it should be the urine and stools of animals that are not permissible to eat. Right?
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
Well,
So
in the English it says that are permissible.
that are permissible to eat.
wrong.
So there's a mistake in that. It's missing from the title. It should be not permissible to eat. So then he says both of these are considered impure. So meaning the urine and the stool or the feces. So then he mentions the hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu that he said أتى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الغائط فأمرني أن آتيه بثلاثة أحجار فوجدت حجرين والتمست الثالثة فلم أجده فأخذت روثة فأتيته بها فأخذ الحجرين وألقى الروثة وقال هذا ركس. With Abdullah bin Mas'ud, he said the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to relieve himself and he asked or he commanded me or told me to go bring him 3 rocks so that he could clean himself. So Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, I could not find 3 stones, so I found 2 stones and an animal dung. And I brought them to him. And then he says he took the 2 stones and he threw away the dung and he said it is riks. And we'll go into what riks means in a little bit, inshallah. Here they translate it as impure, but I mean it needs some discussion. And he says this hadith is related by Al-Bukhârî and Ibn Majah and Ibn Khuzaymah. And in one narration it states it is riks, or it should be it is rijis. It is the stool of a donkey. So this is what the author says. And then he continues, he says, a little amount of it is pardoned though, as it is very difficult to completely protect oneself from it. Al-Walid ibn Muslim says, I said to Al-Awza'i, what about the urine of animals whose meat is not eaten, like the mule, the donkey, and the horse? So then he said that they used to come into contact with these during their battles and they did not wash it off of their bodies or clothes. So this is what the author, what he mentions about animals that can't be eaten. So the urine and the stool that comes from them. And then he goes on in the same chapter, even though the title only mentions the one, he talks a bit about the urine and the stool of animals that can be eaten. So the first issue is to talk about here what would fall under this category. Obviously, khinzir, and dog, any birds and beasts of prey, so any hunting animals like we talked about before, because we can't eat them. The Prophet ﷺ forbid eating them. So like a wolf or a coyote or a falcon or an eagle or any type, an owl, all these types of things which we went over in detail before. So this is what this would be referring to. And obviously the pig, we'll have a specific discussion just because there is some difference, between, it'll come up, so it'll be clear in a bit, inshallah. So the issue of the the urine and stools of animals that you can't eat being najas, this was the opinion of the four Imams. So Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Ash-Sha'bî, and Ahmad, this was their opinion. And the evidence that's used for this is, the first thing is what the author mentioned. So the hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud, that when the Prophet ﷺ was given this animal dung, he said Hâdha Riks. And they use specifically the extra narration that the author mentioned at the end, that he said, which in Arabic would be Hâdha Rijs, Hâdha Rawthatu Himar, or that this is the dung of a himar. And we know that we talked about before that himar or camel or donkey meat isn't permissible to eat. So they use this as evidence that the specific animal that was being spoken about here is an animal that can't be eaten. So the first issue is to talk about what this hadith actually, would be better to continue then. So this is the first actually thing that they mention, is this thing that the author mentioned, this hadith. And they also state that if the animal is not allowed to be eaten, and it's something that we don't come into contact with on a daily basis, then it would be similar to a dog, because like we talked about before, that the opinion of the majority of the ulama is that the dog is considered najas, contrary to Imam Ibn Hazm and Imam Malik and the Mâlikiyyah, who consider the dog to be Tâhir in and of itself. So they say that an animal that can't be eaten is similar to a dog, in that if we say the dog is najas, then any animal that we can't eat should also be najas, or its urine and its feces should be najas, the same as a dog. So they mention this, and they also mention, which goes back to the discussion, so I won't go into too much detail about it, but like we talked about the hunting animals or the birds and beasts of prey, that most of the Ahnâf and the Hanâbilah consider them to be najas, and they mention a number of evidences. So the first evidence that they mentioned was the hadith of Abdullah bin Umar, that he said, خرج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في بعض أسفاره ليلا فمروا على رجل جالس على مقراة له فقال عمر يا صاحب المقراة أولغت السباع الليلة في مقراتك فقال له النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يا صاحب المقراة لا تخبره هذا متكلف لها ما حملت في بطونها ولنا ما بقي شراب وطهور. Or the hadith of Abdullah bin Umar, that he said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went out at night during one of his journeys, and he passed by a man who was sitting by a pond. So Umar said, did a beast of prey drink from your pond tonight? And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, O owner of the pond, don't tell him or don't inform him. It is not necessary, because for it, meaning the animals, is what it took away in its stomach, and for us is what it left behind as for drinking and for purifying. So they use this, and they say that this proves that birds and beasts of prey are considered najas, or that their saliva is considered najas. So if their saliva is considered najas, then what about their urine and their stool? Because they say generally of an animal, the purest part of the animal would be its mouth, because it's continuously generating new saliva and swallowing it, and generating new saliva and swallowing it. So this would be the purest area, as opposed to, for example, the urine and the stool. This is something that went through its digestive system and sat in the body for a long time and then came out, and it's something that would be considered like more impure if we were to accept that that the saliva was impure to begin with.
It proves the exact opposite though. Like it proves that their saliva is not najis.
The hadith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing. Actually.
Because it's like he's saying that if
That's
it,
what we went through before.
We went through it before, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that's what we
each side uses it.
but
So
say
the
no,
ones
it-
who say that it's Tâhir say the fact that, I mean, if it was Najas, then the Prophet ﷺ would have
said don't drink it.
or would have tried to find out, except for the fact that maybe it was such a large amount of water that it wouldn't have
Oh,
been.
yeah, yeah.
So that's
Okay,
so
yeah.
like we said, both sides use it.
That's right. Okay.
The other ones say, well, no, the fact that he just told him don't ask, like
Then it's not
Okay.
Najas.
he didn't say, he would have said it's not Najas, don't worry about it.
But
Like
then
that would have
the
been the
size
issue.
of the water also comes
Into
hand,
play, yeah. But then again, like we talked about, what's the authenticity of this hadith? Is the hadith, is it sahih or da'if?
It says here Al-Bukhârî, Ibn Majah, Ibn Khuzaymah.
No, which hadith are you looking at?
Oh,
The one that was about the pond.
Oh, it's actually no, it's not.
It's da'if.
Yeah,
Is
it's
it?
not,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
da'if
it's
anyway.
da'if,
So
Yeah.
that's
Because it was narrated from Ibn Umar.
it's narrated from Umar also that it was Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah.
But that one's also weak as well.
Yeah.
Both of them are
That
weak.
was Umar and yeah.
Why are they
Yeah.
weak, Sheikh? Is it the isnad or?
Yeah, this one that I just mentioned has Ayyub ibn Khalid al-Harrani, and he's a weak narrator. And there's ittirab, like, so some of them narrated as it was a story from Umar, some said it was Umar with the Prophet ﷺ, so it's not even clear. Like which is the correct sanad. But like again, they both have weaknesses in it. So they use this as well. So they say we have this hadith, the original one from Abdullah bin Mas'ud, which the Prophet ﷺ rejected using this animal dung, and we have the second narration that mentions it was for a himar, which we talked about before. Donkeys can't be eaten, so it falls into this category. And we know we can't eat birds and beasts of prey. And they say, well, we have this evidence also that proves that they're najas. So this is so they use this as evidence, to show that the urine and stool of these animals would also be considered najas. And the evidence that we can't eat these animals, obviously, is the hadith that we talked about from Abu Tha'laba, that he said that the Prophet ﷺ forbid eating the all predators with fangs, so any land animals that had fangs. And in another hadith, that it was from Abdullah ibn Abbas, that he mentioned the animals with land animals with fangs and birds with that have like talons for hunting.
You say like basically all preys and beasts.
So any like animal that hunts.
Yeah.
If it's a bird and it hunts with its talons, or if it's a land animal that hunts with its fangs. Yeah, makhalib.
Yeah.
So they like grab animals with it and
Except
pick them up.
lizards, right?
What's that?
Except lizards, right?
Lizards, they don't have fangs, do they?
Crocodiles.
I don't think they have fangs though.
No, they're not.
They have sharp teeth everywhere, but like the fangs,
No,
like canine teeth,
They don't
Yeah.
have them.
they don't have. Yeah.
That's why there is it's a different topic.
Yeah.
If they hunt, as long as they don't have just specifically fangs.
Well, then some. The issue comes back to there's a hadith, or the hadith says as-Sibā', kullu dhi nabin min as-Sibā'. So some of them say that what is a Sibā', or what is a Sabā', which is like a hunting animal. So some of them say that it has to have the fangs and it eats meat and it hunts with the fangs. Others say it's sufficient that it has fangs and eats meat even if it doesn't hunt. And there's a difference of opinion about that, but the strongest thing is that they eat meat. They hunt with their fangs and they eat. So just having fangs in and of itself, if they don't hunt, then it's not. Because technically, even like an elephant, those are fangs. Those are canine teeth, right? The tusks. But they don't even eat meat to begin with. Let alone do they hunt with it.
So hunting is a condition.
Hunting's a condition, yeah.
So what about hyena?
Hyena, Allahu Alam, the strongest is you can eat it. They asked Abdullah bin Abbas about it.
It's hadith sahih, صح?
Yeah.
Ibn Majah.
And he said,
So you can eat or you can't?
So you know it's a dog, right?
Some people saying like
I
hyena.
don't know if it's a dog or a cat.
It's halal because these are
Absolutely a dog.
Yeah. Because it doesn't hunt though, it's a scavenger, right?
The dogs don't invade the hunt.
It does,
Well, they could, right? If you left them out, they would hunt.
So the
Hyena, that's what they have. They're just easy to use. They'll wake up
They're
somewhere and
scavengers.
steal
No,
it
they're
from them.
scavengers.
What if they're scavengers?
When something dies, they go, they eat it.
Yeah, but some of them they attack you, like they eat like the lamb.
it's not najis, yani. You can have a hyena sitting on
It's a
your
tricky subject.
Yeah, because he won't eat you.
Type. So this is the second evidence, and then they also mention the evidence for pigs. Which, what's the evidence that pigs are? Well, first of all, what's the opinions? Who remembers the opinions about the pig itself?
It's not just period.
No, but what's the opinion?
Opinions though. What's
Some say
Who-
only the meat.
Oh, so, oh yeah, yeah,
Everything.
Some say while it's a dead
yeah.
woman.
Well, oh yeah.
Some say while it's dead Hanâbilah.
who says that it's Tâhir while it's alive?
What's the question again, sir?
Which madhab said that pigs while they're alive they're Tâhir?
Pigs, well,
The madhab?
Yeah, which madhab?
Didn't you tell us we don't have to look at?
We're seeing who's been paying attention.
I wasn't.
I said that, Sheikh, you never answered.
No, it's not. Actually, it's Abu Hanifa. It's always.
Mâlikiyyah, give me that look like I'm like, oh, I should have said anything.
So the Maliki said that it's Tâhir while it's alive. The other madhab, and Imam Shawkani rahimahullah also took that opinion. But the rest, so the Ahnâf and the Shâfi'iyyah and the Hanâbilah took the opinion that it's Najas. So they also use this as evidence to say that since we can't, that this is another animal we can't eat, and we can't eat it, and we know that it's Najas, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after mentioning the dead meat and the pig and the blood, He mentioned that it's Rijs. So they say that the Rijs means Najas. So this is proof that the animal itself is Najas. So how about if the meat itself is Najas and the animal, even when it's alive, is Najas? How about the waste that comes out of this animal? And then the other thing that they mention, or as evidence, is they also talk about the dog. So what's again, we'll ask you guys, who took the opinion that dogs are Tâhir while they're alive?
Hanâbilah.
Who else?
I took it.
Yeah, Tâhir, yeah. I took.
No, but that, no. But
No, like
No,
which
no,
madhab?
Not your school. We're talking about the schools.
So, considering their saliva, Tâhir?
Yeah.
I think it's only Ahmed Hanbal or Hanâbilah. No.
Shâfi'iyyah.
Malik.
And Mâlikiyyah, yeah.
Mâlikiyyah.
And the Thâhiriyyah.
Because of the verse.
About the hunting. Yeah.
And something like that, you said there's a verse.
Yeah, that you send, you don't have to wash there's nothing, and then they say that
Utensil, right?
that when you wash the utensils, it's ta'abbud, it's an act of worship. So it's not because it's najas itself, it's because it's obligatory to wash the thing, and if the saliva went on you or your clothing or somewhere else, you wouldn't have to wash it. But anyway, the point of it is that according to the other madhahib, they say that the dog is najas, and we know we can't eat a dog, and we know that dogs are najas. So they say if, again, like we said, the saliva, which is something that's continuously being reproduced in the mouth, and it's being swallowed, so it's not remaining in the mouth like that, as opposed to something that's been inside the body and then come out, after being decomposed inside the body. If they say if the saliva is najas, then how about everything else that that comes out of it, whether it's urine or stool?
What if you take the opinion like we did, most of us here, that it's non-najas?
Well, then we'll go through. I'll mention the evidence of the ones who say that it's najas, so meaning the urine and the stool of animals that you can't eat, and so we'll mention that, and then we'll see what you guys think of the strength of that, and each thing.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask you a question. Do you want us to know the different opinions, and is that something we should know? Because I remember in the first that you told us it's not important.
The very least, you should know what opinion you take. So go through everything I've told you, learn which one you think is the strongest, know the evidence for it, and then if I tell you, well, what about this? What do you say about this? You should be able to reply to it.
But it's not as important as who took what opinion.
No, it's not as important. But if say for on this topic, if you believe that the saliva of the dog is Tâhir, you should be able to tell me why. Why do you think that? And if I tell you, well, what about this argument? You should be able to answer it. Because you don't want to leave after all this and then someone comes and says, what about this, and you have no idea how to answer it, because it would be, you've wasted your time really. So the point is to know and be able to defend what your opinion that you take. So this is these are some of the evidences that they use. So that the dog is najas, that the pig is najas, that animals that can't be eaten, so birds and beasts of prey are najas, and they use the hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud about the rejecting the dung from the animal, and the strong narration is not clear about what it was, and the weaker narration mentions that it was from a donkey. So they mention this, and they also mention about the cat, and we talked about the cat in some detail. So we said that the vast majority said that the cat is Tâhir, its saliva doesn't need to be washed, and it's not even recommended to wash, and it's not disliked to use the water even. So if a cat drank from the water, it's not makruh at all to use the water for drinking or for wudu or anything like that. But we said there's two other opinions. One opinion is that, I'll tell you the opinion of the Ahnâf. What did they take? Who remembers? For the cat saliva.
It's najas.
No, they didn't take that as najas.
I wasn't here.
You weren't here?
Luckily,
Every dars you weren't here?
The cat, dog, and khanzir. The one you asked about, I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 3 darses.
Isn't about the hadith of the niece of one of the Sahaba?
Abu Qatada, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That's evidence that it's Tâhir.
And also on Aisha radiallahu anha, there's a hadith where
She ate from the...
I was going to ask, is it sahih?
The one,
I can't remember off the top of my head that one. The one from Abu Qatada is Sahih.
the one from,
Which
I think
one
it was
was from
Abu
Abu
Hurairah,
Qatada?
where he licked the bowl,
Hmm?
and he
Yeah,
said,
this.
What did he say?
it's okay, so you make wudu with it.
You licked the water.
No, that's the hadith of Abu Qatada. The other hadith of Abu Hurairah is that he said the dog should be washed 7 times and the cat should be washed once or twice. So that was from Abu Hurairah, from the Prophet ﷺ, and that's weak. And there's also another narration from Abu Hurairah himself that he said the same thing. So that was his opinion. And the Ahnâf, their opinion is that it's Tâhir, but it's makruh. And they say the reason for that is the asl of the cat, or the way it would be normally, is that it's najas, except we have a specific hadith proving that it's Tâhir, because it lives amongst people, and it would be too much of a hardship on the people if cats were najas, because if they come in and out of the homes and come in and out of the buildings, and people, they come up to people and people pick them up and things like this, if it was something that was najas, even its saliva, it would be too difficult for people.
Couldn't people just say, dogs, it would be, they're not najas anymore because it'd be a hardship on them, because in the West there's so much dogs around.
That's the danger of when people say things like it's Tâhir because it's a hardship. Like when you only make that's the reason why we say it's Tâhir, or the only reason it's because it's najas. Because then once people start, then we could say, well, it's the fact that everybody has it is a hardship now. Why isn't it Tâhir, or why isn't it najas? So that type of thing. So that's the problem with that. Who?
Dogs don't have sweat glands. Everything will go from the mouth. That's probably why.
That's how they cool down, yeah.
But technically they're, I don't know if they've done
That's what it is.
That's what they say, yeah. Well, on them.
Because they like them, that's why they say that.
So can you touch the dog while it's dry, or can you touch it?
You can touch it while it's dry. You can touch it while it's wet, according to the strongest opinion. And even like we said, myself and I think most of the ikhwa agreed, or they took the opinion that even the saliva is Tâhir, except for in water and plates and this type of thing, because the hadith is only talking about the plates and talking about the water like containers, and that was the opinion of Imam Malik and Imam Ibn Hazm and Imam Dâwûd ibn Ali, and most of those ulama, and Imam Ash-Shawkani and others, they took the opinion that it's even the saliva is Tâhir, but you still have to wash it in the container. But if it comes on your hands or your clothes, that you don't have to wash it.
6 times water, 1 time dirt, so?
Yeah.
heard of some hadith, but I don't remember. It says like you can touch it when it's dry, but when it's wet, you have to wash it like 7 times. Or
That's one opinion,
yeah.
but it's qiyas on the saliva. So they say the saliva is wet. If the dog is wet, it's the same as the saliva. So Allahu Alam, that's not strong because the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell us that. Yeah.
It's all wet and out.
What's qiyas? The word qiyas in English. What is it?
Analogy.
Analogy.
So this is the evidences that they use to show that the urine and stool from animals that you can't eat are considered najas. So what do you get from this? Based upon what we talked about before, and based upon what you know, before we go into the other opinion, what are some things that you would still need to know about the evidences that they talked about already?
That it's najis?
Yeah. So like, what else is missing from this argument so far that you need to know still?
There is no dalil.
Yeah, the meaning of riks is one thing. Yeah. What else?
The meaning.
What about
riks?
What about animals you can eat?
Inshallah, we'll get into that after this.
Okay.
The
Well,
author mentions
that's
it
what I
next.
mean. That's missing, right?
No, but I mean, even this dalil, even if it's authentic, even if it's riks means rijs, it's not dalil for najasa.
That's what if riks means najas, then obviously it would be.
Oh.
Bas,
Yeah.
bas, okay, so so we talked about the dog, and you guys don't agree that the saliva is najas, right?
Yeah.
Or most of you don't.
I would say.
You say the saliva is najas?
No, I'm talking about.
Okay.
Oh, you moved on to.
No, just each evidence.
No,
What do you think?
The dog.
So the dog,
Yeah, najis.
the saliva.
The saliva is najis. but
Okay.
Touching it on the outside is.
Okay.
Are we talking about the dog?
Yeah, because they mentioned all these categories of evidence. So let's see, do these stand up for anything yet?
Well, each one kind of has its own weakness, you know. Like, well, it depends what opinions you take, obviously.
Yeah.
Evidence about these evidences you're asking.
Yeah.
There's not many from the Quran and Sunnah.
There's one Abu
You know what I mean?
Hurairah.
No, there's hadith. There's this
There's
hadith.
this hadith, but you know what I mean? The other hadith that you mentioned, unless I heard wrong, the da'if, right?
No.
Yeah.
And most of the evidences they're using are like kind of, I wouldn't want to say logical, but like kind of like just like how they think about kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Isn't this a hadith? If a dog drinks, you have to wash it 7 times.
That's a few.
1 time which is soil, but if a cat drinks, you can't wash it once. Abu Hurairah.
Yeah.
Is it 6 or 7? 6
7.
water, 1 dirt. Or 7 water,
times,
1
the
dirt.
last time of which was soil. So
6 water, 1 dirt.
Sahih.
And that's not even mandatory. That's ibadah.
Well, it's mandatory, but it's not because it's najas.
Okay.
It's just like when you perform ghusl, you're not najas, right?
Oh,
You have to perform ghusl though, right?
Sah.
Even though you're still Tahir as a person, your skin is Tahir, your hair is Tahir.
There's some Quran says like you have to
From the Prophet ﷺ, yeah.
Yeah,
It's weak?
It's weak. This hadith is weak.
From the Prophet ﷺ.
Which one?
No, but the other one was sahih and it said the same thing. Wasn't it?
No, from Abu Hurairah if it's sahih.
I don't think. Is there in the Quran says about washing it 7 times?
No, it's in the
Where is
hadith.
it? No.
But sorry, back to what I was saying before about how they're using like just like how they make sense of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Would that be considered a weakness in their opinions?
Well, it would be. Someone could say, you know what, you don't have a clear thing. You're taking from here and there, and like, so the fact that maybe altogether it might have some strength, but is that enough for us to say that it's najas if you're taking from here and here and here? So Allah Alam, yeah. I mean, so then we'll move on. So we'll talk about the other opinion and how they respond to these evidences and the weaknesses, and then we'll see which is the strongest. So the second opinion is that these things would be Tâhir. So the urine and the feces from a bear or a wolf or whatever some other animals, coyotes or eagle. I mean any sort of animal that's hunting, dog. If if you don't take that it's if you take that it's the saliva is Tâhir, then the dog would fall into this category as well, and these types of things. So the ones who took this as opinion, and Ibn Ulayyah, and Dâwûd ibn Ali, and Imam Al-Bukhârî, and Ash-Sha'bî, and others. So this was their opinion that it was considered Tâhir. So the arguments that they use, they say first, what's the rule that we know about najasa? Nothing can be taken as being najas until you have an evidence that is Tâhir. So if someone comes and says this thing is najas, what do we have to tell them? Well, no, you have to prove it to us. We don't have to have an evidence to prove that it's considered Tâhir. It's the opposite, because otherwise it would be, the Quran isn't going to come with everything that's Tâhir. Because if the majority is Tâhir, it's less to mention what's najas, and say, just like when we say we don't need evidence to prove that something's halal, people need the evidence to prove that something is haram, because it's the asl or the default is that everything is halal until proven haram, everything is Tâhir until proven najas. So they say this is the rule that we start with. Then they say, yes, we start with this, but you've brought evidence to show that that these things are considered najas. So they say, so we'll go through the evidences now that they mention, that the opposite and the response to them. So first is the hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. This is authentic hadith, obviously. Same hadith that the author mentioned, Riks.
Yeah.
Riks?
Yeah.
So the other side also used the same hadith.
No, I'm saying that they say the asl is that everything's Tâhir.
Yeah.
You're bringing evidence now to show that it's najas, so now they're going to respond to the evidence that it's najas.
Yeah.
So the first thing is the hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. It's authentic, it's in Sahih Al-Bukhârî. So there's no dispute about whether it's accepted or not as authentic. If it was da'if, the discussion would be done about it, because we wouldn't use it anymore. But we know that it's authentic. It's in Sahih Al-Bukhârî. So here we need two issues. The first is that the hadith of Bukhari just mentions that it's riks. It doesn't mention anything about the himar, or that it's the from a donkey. So this narration about the donkey, it came in Sahih ibn Khuzaymah, not in Sahih al-Bukhârî. So that was extra phrasing, and the one that mentions the donkey it mentions that it's najas, rijis. So the narration of Bukhari says riks only. The one in Sahih ibn Khuzaymah mentions that it's rijis and that it's the stool of a donkey. Yeah.
Sheikh, I'm just a bit confused. Bukhari reported up to stool, but he never said من what animal.
Right.
And then اجت زيادة لكن البخاري روى ركس.
ركس, yeah.
ركس. والزيادة انه من donkey
ورجس.
ورجس عن طريق من؟
It's from Ibn Khuzaymah.
And is it صحيح?
Well, that's what we'll talk about now.
Okay.
Sorry, but about who took the opinion of being najas? Who took it?
The majority, the four imams.
The four imams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's Tâhir was Dâwûd ibn Ali,
Yeah.
who's the Thâhiriyyah, Al-Bukhârî, لا مش Ibn Taymiyyah.
Yeah, here.
What are you reading though? That's the next part from the book. He's talking about ما يؤكل لحمه, Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Ulayyah, Bukhari, Dâwûd ibn Ali, Ash-Sha'bî.
Dâwûd ibn Ali?
Yeah.
We're talking about urine and feces here.
From animals that you can't eat.
Not everybody says it's najas.
No.
The four madhab say that it's najas.
The four madhab, but all these other imams say that it's not. Well, we'll talk about it now.
That's so weird.
Because we know the general rule that everything's thought until we prove otherwise, right? So they say, well, no, we have this evidence to prove that it's najas, and that's why the four imams took it. But now we'll talk about what do the other people say? Like, why don't they accept it?
This is from animals you cannot eat.
Cannot eat, yeah.
Okay, we still haven't got to animals you can eat.
Not yet, no. So they say, first of all, the hadith that mentions the himar it's a munkar narration. The munkar is when someone who is trustworthy or someone who's acceptable narrates something one way, and then someone who's less acceptable narrates the same thing but with a difference. So either without something, or something extra, or they change something. So at this point we have to say, okay, we have this hadith narrated two different ways. they can't both be, or they could both be right, but also they, they don't have the same meaning. One has an extra meaning, or one has a less of a meaning or something. So which one do we accept as being authentic? So here, if we look, the narration from Imam Al-Bukhârî is much more authentic and stronger than the one from Ibn Khuzaymah. So we accept the one from Imam Al-Bukhârî, and we say that the narration about the himar, or about the donkey, is considered weak. So all we have evidence for is that the Prophet ﷺ rejected this stool, or the dung. So we don't know what animal it was from. So with that, we see that either we have to say that it means that he rejected it because it was an animal that we couldn't eat, which we have no evidence to claim, or we say it's for any animal, which means that we then have to say that this ruling also applies to animals that
we
can eat. Cow, camel, lamb, goat, whatever. Just like the idham, yeah. So this is by knowing that the other narration from Imam Ibn Khuzaymah is weak, this is what it leaves us with. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, what does Riks mean? Riks means, or there's two different ways of understanding this. Riks, if we call it Riks or Raks. So in Arabic, or Ra, in English, R-I-K-S. Yeah. So Riks, it can be Riks or Raks. If we say that it's Raks, Raks means it's something that is turned back, or turned away, or returned back. Like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Wallahu arkasahum bima kasabu, or Allah turned them back or turned them away due to what they did. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, urkisu fiha, or they returned back into it. Every time they want to escape, they're turned back or pushed back into it. So if we say raks, then some of the ulama said what's meant by this here is that the Prophet ﷺ rejected this because the dung is raks, so it was food that was turned back into something, something unpure, or something that. So this is one way of looking at it, but this is a weak way of looking at it, because the hadith, the stronger way, or essentially the best way that's narrated is riks. So then we have to look, what does riks mean? Riks means literally it means rijis. And this is also supported by the other narration from Ibn Khuzaymah that he said it's rijis itself. So we say that riks means rijis. So then, what does rijis mean? Does rijis mean najas, or does rijis mean something else, or can it sometimes mean this and sometimes mean this?
Doesn't it sometimes mean haram and sometimes mean najis?
Sometimes it means haram. The asl of what rijis means is that it's considered filthy. And so if we say that it's rijis, then we say the asl is that it's considered unclean. We need a specific evidence though on top of that to say that the rijis here means najasa, or najas. So they say, and we have nothing here. We have nothing where the Prophet ﷺ ordered Ibn Mas'ud to wash his hands because he touched it, or that he said this needs to be washed if you touch it, or if you used it you'd have to, or it wouldn't purify you because it's najas in and of itself, or anything like that. So all we have is that the Prophet ﷺ rejected it. We don't know what animal it was, and we know that he said that it's riks, which means rijis, and rijis means unclean or filthy.
So he initially, if we took the opinion that he said that instead of saying it's najas, he said it was filthy, that this it would have just been preferable, right? It would be preferable because he said it's filthy instead of saying it's najas, and he never told Abdullah to wash his hands.
So we would say it's not allowed for us to use or we shouldn't use it.
Because it's filthy.
But is it najas or not? We need an extra evidence, because we know there's lots of things that are dirty. But does that mean that it's najas? Of course not. There's not a tie always between the two.
So if it means that it would be filthy, would it mean it would be makruh to touch it, or no? It just.
Well, we couldn't even say that.
Okay.
We just say we could say the Prophet ﷺ preferred not to use it because it's something dirty in and of itself. So that would be the stronger way of looking at it.
Sorry, Haytham. Here in this hadith here, the Arabic it says وقال هذا رجس. That's the Bukhârî phrase. In the other phrase it says إنها ركس. Here it says, I mean, that's what it says here. In the other narration that says Riks, إنها Riks. Is that wrong or right? So
اللي عارف في صحيح البخاري هو ريكس.
Here is the other way around.
والله يكون خطأ.
وابن ماجه وابن خزيمة وزاد في رواية إنها ريكس إنها روثة حمار.
لا يكون خطأ. الله أعلم.
بس for sure إنه Bukhari is Riks.
Riks, yeah.
You say it's written backwards?
It's the other way around.
I'll look again, but as far as I remember, it's Bukhari has Riks.
Okay.
So this is the way they respond to the first hadith. Second, they say, what about the hadith about the animals that are hunting, animals and birds? We talked the last time. What is the evidence that they use? First of all, they use the hadith of Abdullah bin Umar about Umar. That when he saw the person, he said, he asked the person about, or the Abdullah bin Amr al-As asked, or Amr ibn al-As asked about the pond and if any animals are drinking from this, and so we said this is weak though, so we put that aside. We don't use it. The other narration from Umar himself, from the Prophet ﷺ, the same story, we said that's weak, so we put it on the side. We have the hadith Abdullah bin Abbas and the hadith of Abu Tha'laba about hunting animals. One says hunting animals, one says hunting animals and birds. We say this is authentic. Obviously, it's in Sahih Muslim. But if the Prophet ﷺ says you can't eat something, does that prove that it's najas?
No.
Okay, so then we put that. We say that's not enough to say that this animal is najas. We have one thing left that's authentic, which is the hadith of about qullatayn. So when they asked the Prophet ﷺ about some of the wells or ponds that the animals would drink from on the outside of in between Mecca and Medina, and so the Prophet ﷺ said, or the hadith says that they asked about as-Sibâ' wal-Dawab. So the Prophet ﷺ said, إذا بلغ الماء قلتين لم يحمل الخبث, or that if the water reaches two qullas, it won't carry any khubath or any najasa. So this hadith is authentic. So they say here, when they asked the Prophet ﷺ about the water, and they mentioned the Sibâ', this shows that they had an understanding originally that the Sibâ' or the hunting animals were najas. So they say this is proof. What does the other side say? They say, first of all, the hadith also mentions ad-Dawab. So that means that we can't say that camels are najas because of this, and we can't say that anything else is najas. So that's first of all. I mean, otherwise we have to. Why do we only take the Sibâ' and not the Dawab? And if we say, well, we have the other evidences from Abdullah bin Umar and from Umar ibn Khattab, well, we said those are weak, so they don't prove anything. Second thing about the hadith of the qullatayn is that we say that they're asking the Prophet ﷺ about these issues. Does this affect the water? The Prophet ﷺ said, if the water reaches this thing, it won't carry any najas, or it won't carry any khubath. This doesn't prove the original thing was najas, because he's saying if the water is lots, nothing affects it. So does that mean that the other thing was najas? It's not clear on that. So Allahu Alam, like myself, and I think maybe it was half and half about the hunting animals and birds, that we reached that they're considered Tâhir while they're alive, which would negate or would reject the evidence that they're najas. So it wouldn't support the idea that the urine and the stools of these animals would be considered najas. Yeah.
Sorry. Just I want to see, just see if I remember this. What is a qulla?
Qulla is it's a bucket or like a container, and there's lots and lots of dispute about what's the actual amount.
Okay.
Like because
200 liter. It's 100, 200 liter. Paramil.
Yeah.
1 paramil is a qulla.
Yeah, it's lots of water. It's like maybe like a bathtub or two, something like that. But.
Is it?
It's Allahu Alam, there's even from the Salaf there was a dispute about which is the qulla. Which is it, the qulla of Hajar? Is it the qulla of this? Is the qulla of Yemen? Is the qulla of so on? There's nothing clear about it specifically.
Can you repeat the hadith in Arabic? إذا بلغ الماء
قلتين لم يحمل الخبث.
What was the Prophet ﷺ referring to? Any animal?
They asked him about the السباع والدواب. Siba is the hunting animals. Dawab just is any animal.
Siba or dawab.
Yeah.
So Siba, the hunting animal, and dawab.
Dawab is any animal.
So,
right. So that's why the other ones say, well, like they're asking about animals in general. Hunting and non-hunting animals. So why do you say that the hunting animal is najas from this hadith, but not the dawab? Like there's no, it's not clear. They're just saying that these animals going to it, does it affect the water?
But we're not disputing here the amount of water.
No, that's a different issue. No, that's a different issue. So they say this is the answer to the Riks hadith. That's the answer to the that it's not najas, like it would be unclean. As we say that the siba' and the hunt, like from the animals and from the birds, are considered Tâhir. So this leaves the dog. We talked about the dog. You know, I think originally most of it, some didn't agree that it's najas, some said it's najas. So what's left is the cat. They say that when the Prophet ﷺ said, "Innaha laysat bi najas, innama hi min at-tawafina alaykum," or it's not najas, it's from something that lives amongst you. They say that the only reason it's not najas is because it lives amongst you. So these other animals that wouldn't live amongst you, they don't have this illah or this factor to make it tahir, so they would be considered najas still. And we talked about that before, and we said specifying that the reason for it being tahir is that it lives amongst you it isn't the correct or the strongest way of looking at it. The stronger way of looking at it is that how could it be najas when it lives amongst you? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't put that hardship on you. So it's not that it's tahir because it lives with you, it wouldn't live with you if it was najas. So there's a Muslim, a Bukhârî and Muslim. So that's so that's the responses to those evidences. So next, the ones who say that it's tahir, so they respond to the evidences of the other side, and then they mention their own evidences. The first evidence, or the first argument, like we said, is that we need a clear hadith, or we need a clear ayah or hadith to prove that it's najas. Second, they use the hadith of Abdullah bin Umar, which we talked about when we talked about the dogs earlier. That Abdullah bin Umar, that he said, who remembers what I'm talking about? Hadith of Abdullah bin Umar, what would the dogs do in the masjid?
Urinate at night, but it would dry.
Oh yeah.
It would be dry, but the Prophet said you don't have to clean it, like spray water.
Well, part of that's right. So the first part of it's right. So the hadith is Abdullah bin Umar, he said, كانت الكلاب تبول وتأتي وتذهب في المسجد وتدبر في المسجد ولم يكونوا يرشون على ذلك شيئا. So this in Sahih Bukhari. So he said that the dogs used to come and go in the masjid and urinate, and then they would leave, and they didn't pour water over that. The ones who say that the urine and feces is tahir, they say, how could it be najas and then this animal would come in the masjid and urinate and leave, and then they would just leave it. They say this is proof. The other side says, well, it's not clear, first of all, because maybe it was so hot there it would dry. Other ones say maybe it was, it would come and do that in an area of the masjid which the people didn't pray in, so there was no rush to wash it off really quickly. So this is two arguments that they say against that hadith. But this, in any case, that's one of the evidences that they use to show that it's tahir.
Sorry, but they would have to take the opinion that the dog is najas for that to be an evidence for them. Because if they take the opinion that the dog is not najas, then they can't use that as evidence because it's a totally different story, right?
Well, they say this is evidence that it's tahir.
That the dog is tahir, or that the feces are tahir?
That everything. Because why would they come and why would they leave it?
That's a good point.
If it's najas.
No, because if they're saying, for example, if they believe the dog is najas, then they can use that as an evidence to say that the feces of an animal that is najas is tahir.
But no one says that though. Like if they believe the animal is najas, everyone agrees that the urine and feces is najas. The only dispute is if the animal is tahir, what about the urine and feces? That's where the dispute is.
But that's not what we're discussing right now, is it?
No, we're talking about animals that you can't eat.
Okay.
So, and that's the issue.
And that's just two different things.
Exactly, yeah. And the last evidence that they use is a hadith from Malik ibn al-Harith, from his father, that he said, كنا مع أبي موسى, so Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, في دار البريد فحضرت الصلاة فصلى بنا على روث وتبن فقلنا تصلي بنا هنا والبرية إلى جنبك فقال البرية وها هنا سواء. And this hadith from Malik ibn al-Harith from his father, that he said, we are with Abu Musa in Dar al-Barid. So what's Dar al-Barid?
That's where they used to send the letters?
Outside Medina?
Well, it's where they used to have the place where the messengers would come and bring all the stuff and park, like they put their horses and camels and donkeys there, and it was the area like where they would, almost like not exactly like a post office, but like the place where the messengers from other cities would come and park their stuff there or leave their animals there. So he says we were with Abu Musa in Dar al-Barid, then the salat time entered. So he led us in the salat upon, so they were praying upon the dung or the feces and on the straw, so for the animals. So they said, you're leading us in salat here while the desert is right beside you. So he said, here and the desert and here are the same thing. And that's narrated by Ibn Abi Shayba, and it's authentic. So they use this as evidence because what kind of animals would they use for like traveling at the time?
Horses and camels.
Horses, camels, what else? Donkeys. What else? Mules. What's the hukam on eating donkeys and mules?
Bicycles?
So if we know that donkeys especially were used for carrying things very often, more than horses even, because horses were very fast, obviously, but they're expensive and they don't carry as much. Like donkeys, you know, they call them pack mules. Like they're used for carrying stuff from city to city or place to place.
But camels last longer, especially in the desert.
Yeah, but so they say, I mean, there are some of those arguments, you know, that they'll say, but they say there are these animals amongst the animals for riding that you can't eat, which is donkeys or anything that's half donkey, a mule or whatever else. So the likelihood that this Dar al-Barid only had animals that you could eat, so only horses and only camels, is very, very unlikely. So when Abu Musa al-Ash'ari prayed on this area where the straw was, and it was mixed in with the straw was the dung or the feces of the animals, this shows that he didn't consider it to be najas. So this is the argument that they use, and this is an authentic hadith. But the other side, what do they say? They say, first of all, we don't know if it was donkeys and mules, we only know that it was animals. Second, one of the opinions, you know, of having a Tâhârah on your clothing and the area from najasa is that it's not fard in the salat, it's only mustahab, or it's recommended, and that's the opinion of some of the Mâlikiyyah. So they say, Allahu Alam, they say it could be that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari didn't consider it fard to have no najasa on your body during the salat, or he only considered it to be mustahab. Or they say it's possible that he put something down on top of the area, like a cloth or a carpet or something like that, and prayed on top of it. Allahu Alam, you know, the carpet one it seems very weak, because they made a point of mentioning that he prayed upon the straw and the dung. So that's very weak, and you know, Allahu Alam with the other two arguments. So this is the issue of animals that can't be eaten, and the issue of whether they're najas or not. Well, myself, I lean towards that it's tahir, because I find the evidence that they use to say that it's najas is quite weak, either authenticity or